Welcome to Santos Brothers Eats.
Food worth mentioning. All sound checks are clear, and welcome back to Santos Brothers Eat, where we're talking about food worth mentioning. I'm with my brother, Chef Jeff.
Hello, how's everyone doing out there today?
Excellent. So we've just decided, me and my brother Jeff, we decided we're going to do a special tart episode. And first we're going to be talking about egg tarts, the different types of egg tarts. And then we're going to be talking about butter tarts. And, as far as egg tarts go, there's a difference. If you see an egg tart out there, you're going to want to know if it's one of the, I guess it's called the Chinese egg tart, or if it's the Portuguese style egg tart. What can you tell us about those, Jeff?
Well, the Portuguese egg tarts, which are also known as Pastel De Nata, that's sort of the Portuguese name. They're basically a custard, a very sweet custard, and a very, very flaky pastry. So both the pastry and the custard inside are both delicious. And then once they finish off baking, then they either broil it or put a blowtorch to it to add a little char effect to get the sugars, a little caramelization effect to get more of the sugars and sweetness out of the Portuguese tart. They're one of our favorites, myself and Diana, and I think everyone likes them as well. And the pastry itself is like a puff pastry, so it's very, very flaky, very, very unique. And the custard, again, like I said, is also delicious and sweet. And Ken, you've had the egg tarts, the Chinese egg tarts. What can you tell us about those?
Well, I'm not a huge fan. Like, as you guys know, me and my brother Jeff, we love eggs.
Yeah.
And when I got the egg tarts, I usually pick them up, or actually I don't usually eat them now, just because I'm not a big fan of them. As I recall, it's a different crust than the Portuguese. It's not a flaky crust. It's more of a, I don't know what you call it.
Well, it's more like ordinary pie crust.
Yeah, it's like a pie crust. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the custard isn't necessarily sweet.
No, not at all. As most people may or may not know, with Chinese desserts, they're usually not overly sweet, if not sweet at all. I guess that's part of their culture. So I'm not too sure if they saw Portuguese tarts and developed their own egg tart and said, we'll call this our egg tarts, our dessert. But yeah, it's not really one of our favorites out there to have. When in Toronto, one of the best places that we find egg tarts is called Nova Bakery, Nova Era Bakery, and there's quite a few in mostly downtown, but you might see a few in the suburbs.
Okay.
But surprisingly, another location where we could also find good Portuguese tarts is Raba Foods. Raba is basically like 7-Eleven, but they have a more extensive items. Like they have like a hot food counter, salad bar. And actually, a Raba I went to recently also has like a desserts from Dufflet's pastry and some gluten-free options. But for some reason, they also carry Portuguese tarts. So I don't know if they are in conjunction with another Portuguese bakery, or if Raba is Portuguese or not. But for some reason, if you go to a Raba, you might find some Portuguese tarts. Look for them by the cashier, because if they're fresh, they're under a dome. Or if they have a bakery section, there might be some there as well.
Well, that's good to know. But can you vouch for those at all? Have you tried those at a Raba or no?
I have, in fact. When we were living in Brampton, I remember going to a Raba because it was part of a Petro-Canada. I was getting gas, and I happened to look over. I said, Portuguese tarts. And I was a bit skeptical at first, but I said, you know what? I'll grab two just for tasting purposes. And when I brought them home, we ate them, and we were like, wow, these are really good. We were surprised.
Good to hear.
And so, yeah. And so if we're in the mood for Portuguese tarts, we can't find a Portuguese or Italian bakery, then we'll find a Raba. And they'll have 9 out of 10 times they will have Portuguese tarts, and that's where we'll get them from.
That's good to know. So if you want to try some Portuguese egg tarts and you can't find a special bakery, you could probably find a Raba, because there's a lot of those around. Remind us again, where do you like to get your Portuguese tarts?
It's called Nova Era Bakery. We'll provide a link. And Portuguese tarts, they also have different flavors. So the regular Portuguese tarts, there's egg, but there's some with chocolate which us being a chocolate fan, we thought they'd be good, but I don't know, that mixture of the chocolate and custard wasn't to our liking.
Okay.
And then there are some that have
Well,
like
hold
maybe
on.
a bit of.
Let me. I want to clarify this. This chocolate, is it chocolate custard or is it kind of like chocolate and custard?
It's chocolate and sorry, it's chocolate topped Portuguese tarts. So they put a drizzle of chocolate on top.
Okay.
And for some reason, that combination didn't work for us.
Okay.
But if they're selling them, then I guess they are popular out there.
Yeah.
And I think there was some with fruit as well. I can't remember, but to us, it's just a nice traditional Portuguese tart or pastel de nata. Pastel de nata. There we go.
Pastel de nata.
Yes.
Okay. And you can get that at Nova.
Yes, Nova Era Bakery.
And then as far as price point, do you remember how much they cost at Nova versus Raba, that sort of thing?
They're usually between $1.25 and $1.50 each, and then if you get 6, I think it's a better deal that way.
Okay.
6 for $8, I think it is, or like it could be. Yeah, that sounds about right if I remember correctly. Oh, and a little hint, a little thing. Like I said, because they put it under the broiler to get more caramelization, I usually ask for the darker ones because I know there'd be a bit more sweetness to that from the custard.
That's like a little chef life hack there for
it is, yeah.
For Portuguese egg tart. Actually, even Wait, do they broil the Chinese ones too?
No, not at all.
Not at all. Okay, I don't remember that at all. Okay.
Yeah, so they're just yellowish, and that's it.
Yeah, so. Like it actually looks. It could look like, if you're not careful, it could look like a lemon tart.
You know? Yeah, you're right.
Do you even like the Chinese ones or no?
No, not really. Like,
yeah, okay. What would you rate the tarts? Actually, so you've had the chocolate. Like, what would you rate the plain and the chocolate over at Nova?
Well, like I said before, the chocolate wasn't to our liking, so maybe give it a 6. Like, it wasn't overly, because they just put a like drizzle of chocolate, so maybe 6 out of 10. But the original Portuguese tart from Nova Era, I give it like an 8.
An 8 out of 10.
Yeah, make it a 9. Make it a 9.
9 out of 10.
Especially when they're fresh and the crust is still crunchy. You know, it's a good texture, nice crust, crispy, crunchy crust, and then nice custard in the middle. Nice. They're delicious.
Nice. And then and then remember the chef life hack would be, make sure you ask for the dark ones.
Yes,
the dark ones will be sweeter. So just so that you're aware of that. And then what would you rate the Raba? The Raba butter, not butter tarts, the egg tarts at Raba.
Those I give it 8 because they're not baked there fresh, so they are shipped in, so they may be a bit stale. It's just a warning. But again, they're of good quality. So, like I said, I don't know if they come from Nova or another Portuguese bakery, but they are authentic Portuguese tarts. Like the crust, you can tell by the crust right away that these are good Portuguese tarts. So about 8.
Excellent. So if you want to have some Portuguese tart, obviously first go to an actual bakery. Jeff recommends the Nova. All right. If you can't make it there, then go over to Raba. And the Nova, those are 9 out of 10. Unless you get the chocolate, they're 6 out of 10. And then if you can't find a bakery, go to Raba. You'll still get an 8 out of 10. And then always look for the darker ones, because if you like it a little bit sweeter, get those darker ones. And then as far as Chinese egg tarts, neither myself nor my brother recommend those. So don't think that, I've tried it at the Chinese style. I've tried it before. They're different. They're totally different. And to many people, including myself and Jeff, they're much better the Portuguese style. And so so that is, that's the first half of what we're talking about of tarts. We talked about the egg tarts, and we're going to be talking about the next type of tart. If I understand correctly, these are Canadian, aren't they?
Yes, they are. They're strictly Canadian. It's buttered tarts.
Wow.
And for some reason, I'm surprised that butter tarts are only Canadian, but I guess it's because we grew up with them. We thought they'd be everywhere, but I believe the States has a version of them. I think they call them sugar tarts, or like something with raisins. It escapes me. I'll try to find it. But butter tarts are Canadian.
and then just so that our listeners know, I actually lived in the States for about 8 years or
yes,
12
of
years.
Course.
And I was in, the Western side. I was in Utah. They didn't know what butter tarts were. And so the closest thing would be like those pecan tart things. That's the closest thing.
Okay.
You know how there's like that sugar in the pecan pie kind of thing? Like that.
Yeah.
So that's the closest thing, but they didn't have butter tarts. They didn't know what that was. So.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, it's butter tarts basically are made out of butter and sugar, which makes a syrup and a bit of eggs to make a custard, and then the addition of raisins or other nuts. And there's other bakeries that are doing other stuff with them, like adding peanut butter, coconut, a bit of lemon to it. Yeah, it's just amazing what you can do with butter tarts. And in fact, there's a butter tart festival in Northern Ontario and area, and there's also a butter tart trail. I don't know if that's still happening currently due to the times we're in, but yeah, butter tart trail. There's all sort of trail, like apple cider trail, maple syrup trail. So depending around the city of Toronto, because there's more forest and everything else, they have more options to. The people can like either bike or drive to various smaller towns, and it looks like each town will do their own butter tart or cider or maple syrup. So they've made these various trails that you could follow and explore the towns, explore their main streets and see what else they have to offer. So yeah, it adds a bit to the community that's around Toronto area.
That's pretty neat.
Yeah.
That's pretty. And then typically for butter tarts, the crust is like a typical pie crust. Is that right?
Typical pie crust, maybe a bit more flakier. Again, different bakeries will have their own sort of crust to it, but yeah, it's a basic pastry recipe. And just if you want to know, for making a regular pie dough, it's a 3-2-1 ratio. So 3 parts flour, 2 parts shortening, or a mixture of shortening and butter, and then 1 part cold water.
Gotcha.
Yeah, mix those together, and that's your basic pie pastry recipe. But like I said, some will do maybe a puff pastry to do it, or they'll make a more of a give some more flavor to the pastry, or a different pastry altogether. But as long as the pastry holds the goodness of the butter tart sweetness in the middle, then that's all you need to know.
Very good. And so, where would you suggest we get some good butter tarts?
So the ultimate place that Diane and I love is called Sweet Oven. The original location is in Barrie, Ontario, which is about an hour away from Toronto. And they do butter tarts right. Their crust is amazing. And the butter tart filling, there's 2 types of fillings. One that is really runny. And so as soon as you open it up, it oozes right away. I like both fillings, and another filling is more firm. So when you cut into it, it holds its place. So you can split it in half easily, if you wanted to. If you want to share your butter tart, go ahead, and the filling remains, so you could share it evenly. There's no risk of it oozing out. I like both. I like the runny part. The runny butter tarts a bit more than the more firmer tarts. But yeah, Sweet Oven. And what they say is, like, if you do one thing, just do one thing right. And they basically just do butter tarts. They sort of branch out of the cheesecakes, but they're more known for their butter tarts. And what they actually do is, depending on the day of the week you go, then they'll have different flavors. Like I'm looking at the website now, they will always have plain pecan, raisin, and mixed nut. But on Mondays, they have coconut and coffee. On Tuesdays, they have cinnamon raisin and chocolate chip. Wednesdays, they have mint Oreo and English toffee. Oh, I should go on Wednesday. Wow. Thursday, there's butterscotch, chip, and scorbit. Friday is, lemon. Lemon on Friday and mint as well. And then Saturday, cinnamon raisin. Oh, raspberry. Raspberry is very good. I've had the raspberry butter tarts from Sweet Oven, and they're delicious. Yeah. Limited daily selections include Oreo, Score, chocolate chip, and more.
Yeah, I mean, I've had their butter tarts a number of different times. I've actually only been in there one time with you,
Yeah.
and it's like, you think, oh, they sell butter tarts, and like, kind of like you mentioned before, there's all these different styles. Like before, there was just one type; it was the plain butter tart, but now it's almost as diverse as donuts. It's just
Yes.
whatever. They're adding coconut. I'm sure one of these, maybe during these festivals, I'm sure someone's going to do a bacon one, like, or something like that. Wouldn't be surprised if I heard, someone does something like that. They add bacon to their butter tart. Actually, that sounds really good now that I think of it.
I'm trying to remember if I ever had a bacon butter tart. Off the top of my head, I don't think I've ever had, but I'm pretty sure they're out there. I'm pretty sure they're out there.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they're out there. Just because of how popular bacon is and how good it would be with that sort of sugary syrup of a butter tart. And so that's spectacular. So when you go to Sweet Oven, depending on the day, obviously you said raspberry's very good. So if you went there on a Saturday or whatever day it was, you get the raspberry, you get the plain. Any other flavors that you suggest?
I'm a big pecan and raisin fan myself.
Okay.
Scorbit is delicious. Score, I think, is Canadian chocolate bar. It's basically just chocolate and a hard toffee center. For sure. Oh, and lemon too. Like I like raspberry and lemon myself in butter tarts. That sort of tartness, but the sweetness as well.
Yeah.
It's a good combination with the overall sweetness of the butter tart itself.
I was going to say, now Sweet Ovens, I would imagine, just the way you're talking about them, that they're all going to be ranking high in terms of your scale out of 1 to 10.
Yeah, Sweet Oven for us is 10 out of 10 all the way.
Okay.
It's just like I said. It's their crust and their filling. Always 100%. They know what they're doing. Like I said, if you do one thing right, and their one thing is butter tarts.
You mentioned that their original location is in Barrie. Are there others?
Yep. So they just opened a location in Toronto in the beach area. So it's the Queen Street East and Woodbine area. And they also have a third location in Orillia, which is about 30 minutes away from Barrie. I don't know exactly where in Orillia they are, but the location in Barrie is at Mapleview and 400. So they're in Park Place. It's called the Park Place, not arena, but a Park Place shopping area, I believe it's called, but Park Place, but Mapleview and 400 area. That's where they are.
Yeah, and we'll include I'm sure they have a website. You said you were looking at it before. We'll include their website in the show notes. It'll show you all the locations. So as Jeff says, it scores 10 out of 10. Just about any tart that you get there, they're scoring a 10 out of 10 on that. And again, it's called Sweet Oven. Mm-hmm. But you just had some butter tarts at a new place.
We did. It's so just north of Toronto, about an hour and a half north. It's called Bell Fountain. Mm-hmm. It's part of the Grand River. So just north of Milton, I believe. They have good butter tarts, not as good as Sweet Oven. So these butter tarts, it's part of the Bell Fountain Country Market. Their crust is a bit more firmer than Sweet Oven ones, and their fillings are okay. Like I had the apple cinnamon, that real pieces of apple. They also had a Scorbit one, which is pretty good. But I give them an 8 out of 10. The one in the Country Market, and I also bought one recently it's called Tartistry. They're on the Queensway, so if you're in the Etobicoke area of Toronto. And what makes them unique, Tartistry, is everything they prepare is all gluten-free. So they have gluten-free butter tarts. They have gluten-free meat pies. They actually have chicken pot pie, and I know you like those. And other desserts and anything with a pastry, but it's all gluten-free.
Wow.
And because Diana, I mentioned before, she's gluten sensitive. Like she can't eat gluten, but she might have little problems, but not as bad as if she was celiac. Those tarts, maybe 6 out of 10. Like we appreciate that they are doing gluten-free, but for us, their gluten-free crust wasn't really the best flavor-wise, and their filling was just okay. Like they had a lot of assortment flavors, and we tried. I know we had the raisin, plain, and pecan. I think we also had maybe chocolate, but yeah, taste-wise they were okay, not sweet oven okay.
I'm sorry. So wait, Tart is free. This isn't the This is, where's this one again? This one's in.
Sorry, the Tartistry is on the Queensway, so
right.
it's it's in the Etobicoke area of Toronto, so West Toronto area.
And I want to really clarify something here as far as
Yeah.
gluten-free crust goes. It is going to be hard to compare a gluten-free crust to a regular crust. There's always going to be a little bit of people might think it's inferior just because of the nature of the crust. So it is hard to compare apples to apples that way.
Yeah.
So just to be fair to them, they're maybe one of the owners is gluten intolerant or something like that. So they're obviously serving a target market there as far as that goes. And then what was the other place? I forgot what the other place was called that we went to this weekend.
It was just it was called the Country Market in Bellefontaine.
Bellefontaine, that's right.
By the Grand River.
What would you rate those ones?
Sorry, excuse me. About same thing, 6 out of 10. The crust was good, but the filling was okay. Not sweet oven okay, but just okay.
All right.
Yeah.
So if you want a really good one, I mean, you're going to have to. It sounds like you got to go to sweet oven because we talked about two other ones which were 6 out of 10, but one was gluten free, and the other one. It sounds like they have the dynamic flavors because you mentioned they have the apple and score, but they just don't measure the sweet oven. Maybe if sweet oven didn't exist, you'd rate them higher. But
that's right.
That's what happens.
That's right. And I'm looking here on the website for the Butter Tart Tour. That I mentioned that before. They're in the Kawarthas area, so north of Toronto. And on their main page, there's nothing about the COVID restrictions, so they may be going still. They're small little towns. They have a main street. So I'll include this link in our podcast as well, if you want to look them up and if you want to explore more. It's getting summertime now, so I know that there's sort of restrictions are being slowly lifted. So if you feel that you once we know better about restrictions, then you have a quick drive out to the country and try some butter tarts. Yeah. Okay. And speaking of tartistries, I just want to add on what Ken said. I do have a couple of friends, and they live in the beach area, but they actually do order from Tartistry, and they say they love their products there, and they are gluten intolerant. So, like Ken said, they are filling a need of the population, and I guess that they're doing it right. If someone from the East End is ordering all the way from the West End for product, then people do appreciate what they're doing.
Excellent. That's good to know. It's good to know that you have some friends that are actually ordering from there, especially since there is a sweet oven. If they're in the beaches, there's a sweet oven pretty close to them.
Yeah.
But of course, they're doing it because of the gluten intolerance.
Yes.
But it shares a lot. I mean, it shows a lot. I mean, if you're going to get some butter tarts, do it right. You can use. I mean, I suppose you can get them from the grocery store or something. But if you really want to treat yourself, either make go to sweet oven. I mean, that's the only tarts that Jeff is giving a 10 out of 10 on. And if you can have different flavors, very dynamic. It sounds like, as dynamic as donuts. You can have whether you got some with pecans or you get some with apple or even score bits. There's a lot of different choices that you can have. But this week we talked about tarts. We talked about the Portuguese. Well, we talked about the egg tarts, both the Portuguese and the Chinese style. And we also talked about butter tarts. That's what we talked about this week. This is what we consider food worth mentioning. And we will be talking about more food that is worth mentioning. And what we invite you to do is, if there is certain foods that you want us to try and to talk about, we would love that. And so don't feel free to reach out to us. We do have a website. It's real simple. It's Santos Brothers Eat, and Brothers is BROS, like Mario Brothers. So Santos Bros Eat .card.co, santosbroseat.card.co. And here's a caveat here: card has 2 R's in it, but we will put that link in the show notes. And that's this week's food worth mentioning. We will be back next week with more food that we feel worth is mentioning, right, Jeff? That's right. And until next time, remember this quote from Julia Childs: people who love to eat are always the best people. And that includes, of course, Chef Jeff and his brother, me, Kenny, and you too, if you love to eat food worth mentioning. Thanks a lot, everybody. All right. Have a good day. All right, take care. Oh, well,
Okay.
that was a quick one. I think that one went well.
Yeah, it is very precise.
You've been listening to Santos Brothers Eat.
Food worth mentioning.